Today I'm walking you through 5 things that drastically help me as a beginner runner. If this is your first time here, my name's Justina. I'm a personal trainer based out of New York City who decided to pick up running at the beginning of this calendar year to improve her heart health. And I have to say, I think it's actually really nice and refreshing to see people actually be beginners at things and then see them in real time navigate the hard stuff, which I have definitely shared with all of you on this channel so far. Now, if you want to see a little bit more about my running journey, I do have an entire playlist that I will link down below. And if you want to see more in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. So starting right off the bat with tip number 1, follow a plan. And I mean this in both the sense of running and strength training. But let's start with running. My absolute favorite place to start for beginners is Nike Run Club. This is not sponsored. God, that would be awesome. But I've been an avid user of the Nike Run Club since 2021, 2022. I'll have to look back on my stats and pop them up here. Now, I used Nike Run Club when I first got into running a few years ago with the 8-week 5K program. And then I used them again at the beginning of this year, reworking through the 5K and then the 10K training plans. And the big reason that I love them for beginners is because they have the option for a lot of guidance along the way, specifically through their guided runs. And if you've ever used Nike Run Club, you know that the GOAT is Coach Bennett. If you know, you know. Personally, I found that when I was starting out, it was really helpful just to kind of have someone motivating in my ear, reminding me to breathe, reminding me how to strike the ground, chest up, slight lean forward, and even just breaking down what different paces should feel like. I'm not even gonna lie, sometimes I do go back to the guided runs on days where I'm feeling a little less motivated because Coach Bennett has some of the best prompts to just get you thinking during the run, which for me, half the battle is getting my brain to detach from the fact that running can be really uncomfortable, especially when I first started out. Now, the other thing I like about Nike Run Club for beginners is that they rely a lot more on just RPE or rate of perceived exertion and a lot less on actual pace. Actually, probably they don't really rely on pace at all. The closest thing you'll get there is in speed runs, they will say your 5K pace, your 10K pace, your mile pace, your best pace. But they're also correlating that more so back to an RPE or how it feels and less about what your actual time is. Personally, I think that beginners chasing really firm time goals is not the best way to go about it, simply because you haven't given yourself enough of a chance to understand what different gears you have access to, and it can lead to some injury if you're really pushing yourself a little bit faster than you actually need to in the moment. Now moving into the strength side of things, runners need to be strength training. Full stop, no exceptions. You need to be picking up and putting down heavy things. This is not only going to help your legs stay strong for longer distances, for hills, for sprints, for endurance, but most importantly, it is just going to help you strengthen your connective tissues, your muscles, so that you can run longer, faster, and safer. Runners who do not strength train at least once a week are far more prone to injury than runners who actually do strength train. And also remember that injury does not necessarily mean worst case scenario like ACL tear or Achilles rupture. I'm more so just talking about the nagging things that continually pop up, the 3 or 4 out of 10 on the pain scale, because those are the things that are really going to inhibit your runs and inhibit your motivation and how you feel. Now, there are a lot of different programs out there that complement running really well, but I would be silly to not plug some of my own. My online platform, The Fit Club, has over 15 programs with different focuses, and a few of them are actually a great fit for runners. First is the 4-week stability program. This is going to have lots of single side work and overall a big focus on stabilizing muscles. Obviously, we're working on stability, but specifically, we'll also see a good chunk of inner thigh and calf work, which is really important for runners. My next recommendation is the 4-week advanced athletics program. This is going to challenge different angles or bases for basic movement patterns. For instance, we may see an overhead press from the floor rather than from a more stable position like seated or standing. Once again, this has great crossover into running because we're recruiting a lot more of our stabilizing muscles. And then finally, the 4-week move and mobility program is a great option, especially if you're more of a beginner into strength training. And this guy just got a little facelift and a big update. Now, like I said, it's a little more of a beginner program, but it does incorporate a lot of mobility or joint specific work into our strength programming, which again is really important for runners. Now, here on YouTube, there's actually a free workout from every single one of the programs that I listed. They're all follow along, but I also have gym versions of these programs where you basically go through, you get demo videos, you can record your sets and reps and all that jazz. So anyway, that's enough of self-promotion. Let's move on to tip number 2. So my second tip is to understand the why. Specifically, why each run is programmed. When I first started running, and I feel like a lot of people fall into this trap, it's like you approach it as like, I'm just going to go out and run as fast as I can for as long as I can until I feel like I'm dying. And then that's how you run. And I think for obvious reasons, that's not a great approach, but it's just not very sustainable if you're looking to build a long-term running routine. So like I kind of touched on quickly in the first tip, you do want to have a really great understanding of the different gears you have access to, and then what those different paces are going to elicit in terms of an adaptation. So let's start with a recovery run. This is going to be our zone 2 work, or like base training. And I want you to think of recovery runs and like zone 2 runs as kind of the bottom of your pyramid. So this is your foundation. This is your aerobic base, meaning this is the pace that you could run at for a really long time. It doesn't recruit a lot of fatigue on your body. So you can do a good chunk of it, whether it's running, whether it's cycling, whether it's on the elliptical, however you want to get this zone 2 work in. But essentially the adaptation that we're doing here is not only building a base, but more specifically, one of the biggest adaptations of zone 2 work is that you're going to actually build more capillaries. Think of capillaries as like teeny tiny little blood vessels. And basically the more you have, the more oxygen you can then deliver to your muscles to then continue to do this aerobic work. So zone 2 or recovery runs or your base training, however you want to call it, it's going to be more like that 5-6 RPE or rate of perceived exertion. And it basically just gives you somewhere to go. It gives you somewhere to go and grow. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's the only thing that will make you faster, but it is one piece of the puzzle, and it's a pretty darn big one. Then we get into tempo runs, which I kind of think about as like more of your race pace. It's going to be kind of that like uncomfortable pace that you can hold for, a good chunk of time, but it is pretty fatiguing. And it's probably going to be a pace that you're spending a lot of your race in if you are training for a race. And in terms of RPE, I like to think of this as like a 7, maybe 8 out of 10. So it's something that's uncomfortable, but not impossible to hold for a period of time. And then we get into speed runs, which is fast runs, fast training. Typically, you're going to see this programmed as intervals, so 200-meter repeats or 400 or 800, whatever. Often, this is going to be a much higher RPE, probably closer to like an 8, 9, maybe even a 10. And again, a lot of the speed work is going to be very specific on what you're training for. For instance, when I was training for a 10-miler, my speed work looked a little bit different than when I'm training for a sub 35K right now. So for me personally, once I started to understand like why each run was programmed, I stopped trying to like race every single run that I had. And that was really freeing because it not only like gave me the ability to slow down, but then also ended up giving me the ability to speed up when I had to. Which does bring us nicely into tip 3, which is to slow down. And I do mean this in 2 different ways. Like, yeah, obviously, like we just talked about, you're probably going to want to slow down a little bit more than you think for a lot of your longer runs just to help really build that aerobic base. But I more so mean this in terms of volume. Running is really trendy right now. I feel like I hopped into this like right when it was really taking off, but you'll see a lot of content online about running, and you see a lot of people with like 20 miles in their week, 30 miles in their week. And if you are a beginner runner, you are not going to be able to safely handle that much volume that quickly. You need to build up to it. We have to remember that when we're running, we're absorbing like 2 to 3 times our body weight, which is a lot of load to absorb over and over and over again. So we need to take that time to build up our mileage slowly to really make sure that our tissues or our muscles, tendons, ligaments, joints, all of that stuff is prepared to handle that force. Think of it like strength training. Would you start strength training for the first time in your life doing a 6-day split with 2 hours in the gym every time? No, your body would hate you. And you would spend so much time recovering that you wouldn't actually ever make any adaptations. You'd never move the needle further. We need to approach running under the same lens. And unfortunately, I want to make a whole video just about this, but you see so many like couch to half marathon or couch to marathon training plans where people who have never run sustainably in their lives are now taking like 12 weeks to prep for a half marathon. Personally, I think it's, you can do whatever you want, obviously, but personally, I think it's really irresponsible for anyone to like sign off on that. And obviously, everyone is different with their backgrounds, but I'm specifically talking about people like myself, right? People who are not runners. Let's take me as an example. I started running consistently in January. The last time I was consistent with running was about 2 years ago. So all of that adaptation is gone by my standards. So I started running consistently in January of this year. It is currently October. And my goal is to run a half in somewhere between March and in May of next year. So I'm giving myself 12 to 16 months to build up to the goal of running 13.1 miles. That's a lot of time, but that's how it should be. So instead of just focusing on getting to like the big end goal, I would really recommend giving yourself more time, breaking it up into chunks, because honestly, otherwise your body's not going to adapt well and you're going to be dealing with little chronic injuries along the way the entire time, and it's going to make the entire process a lot less enjoyable. I will say the number one thing that I'm really proud of, granted, I have been working with a coach for the past few training blocks, but I'm really proud of myself that with working with somebody, I not only have not been injured, but a lot of the little nagging aches and pains that I've had in the past have completely disappeared. So that's a big win. Let's go into tip number 4. So my next tip is to warm up properly. I actually made a video earlier this year about warming up for your runs if you want like a more in-depth refresher, but we're going to break it down quickly here. A lot of people just kind of start their run. Okay. You can do that, right? Like, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never done that. Like, you can absolutely do that. But especially as you start to build up like more mileage or even more speed, it gets a little dicier to just kind of like raw dog it and just start going. And aside from that, it's just like you're increasing the risk of like chronic issues popping up. So I'm going to give you a very, very brief, just like 3 things. Pick 3 things and then you're out the door, and it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. All right, step number 1 is to mobilize. So pick a drill or 2 to help mobilize the hips, ankles, knees, one of them, all of them, whatever. The next step is to wake things up. So I would pick again 1 to 3 things and just hitting things that are a little sleepier. For me, it's usually my soleus or that deeper calf muscle, and then my glutes. And then step 3 is to absorb. Pick a plyo, a skip, a hop, a leap, a bound, just something that kind of gears you up into your actual run. I usually just take 5 minutes and then my ass is out the door. All right, we're finally here. Tip 5. And my tip is to eat more. Specifically carbs. If you're training for longer distances, and to me, I'm going to say that's like more than a 10K, so more than 6 miles, you should probably start thinking a little bit more about your carb intake. And I'm not only talking about like during run, we're actually not really going to talk about like during run or in run fueling. I want to talk more about like what you're prioritizing in terms of pre-run and then post-run. And also to be really clear, I'm not saying that with distances shorter than a 10K, you don't need to be thinking about carbs and your fueling. You absolutely should be as well. But I think that once you hit that like 10K plus mark, you start to feel the difference a lot more if you're not having enough fuel or carbs in general. Personally, with like more just recreational runners or even beginner runners in general, I don't think you need like to calculate based on your body weight in kilograms, like how many carbs you should be eating a day. I think it's more just like a general acknowledgement and observation of like, are you having some carbs before your run? Are you replenishing them after your run? And that's kind of it. You know, if you're running first thing in the morning, can you get like a piece of toast, or like the Pop-Tarts are all the rage now. I highly recommend that because I love a Pop-Tart. And then once you're done with your run, you want to replenish that. You want to replenish those glycogen stores. I will tell you, and like this is why I'm so confident sitting here and giving you this tip, because I can tell you I have done enough runs unfueled and fueled at all different distances and paces. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not worth it to run unfueled. It's literally just not. Have some carbs, don't overthink it. You're using them as energy, and then have some when you're done. It's not only going to aid in your performance, but it will really aid in your recovery as well. And those are my 5 tips for beginner runners. So whether you're a beginner runner or if you've been doing this for years and you want to share something that you also think would be helpful, I would love to hear about it down in the comments below. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I will see you all in the next one.